All right, welcome back. It's COMP305. It's fall 2016. It's week 4, part 2 of our broadcast. Finished talking about assignment 2 in a little bit of detail, just to get you guys going. Remember, next week again, lab 1 of what your wireframes are going to be for assignment 2, your final grade. Please be ready. Okay, I want to finish the mail pilot build, and I want to start off by looking at the previous project, which is, if you go to Unity Projects, I have something called Mail Pilot B, which is what I did with you guys last week. Project Mail Pilot B, and call it Mail Pilot D. We did C earlier today with the previous group. Mail Pilot D with you guys now, right? Also with Mail Pilot D, kind of pull this in. I have to get rid of the Git repository, because I want to start a new Git repository with this one, because we're going to start from scratch. So, well, point. So I'm going to say remove -rf and Git. You can also do it in Windows by just removing the hidden Git folder. Right? Okay, so I'm in Mail Pilot D. I'm going to make a new repository. So Git init git commit -m, and we'll say initial commit. There we go. And I'll clear the screen. And I need a repository online, so I'm going to go into GitHub. The repository is going to be. I'm going to do a little bit differently this time, because I have Mail Pilot C. But just to show that, before I kind of connect to my repository there, I want to pull my files, COMP305, into some kind of editor. And I recommend something like a Visual Studio Code or something like that. I'll show you what I'm going to do here. Studio Code. I want to create a git ignore file. So I want to kind of go and make a new file. I'm going to call this file git ignore. Or you can do it on command line. But the git ignore file, you can also use editor, like an edit program to do that too, right? Inside your git ignore file, which is inside now my folder, by the way, right? I want to ignore builds, so I don't want to have any builds folder. And I want to also ignore, on my Mac, ps store, ignore those files, right? Sometimes what I also get with some of the stuff, if you look at project settings, this is good. Sometimes I also have something else called meta. So if I go to my assets, notice I have all these meta files, right? Now, if I ignore these files, then the scenes and everything else that you get, you won't get them. So please be careful not to ignore, right? That would be very bad. But however, I have to also point out, if you're working with another partner in the future, if I ignore the meta files, the project, it'll recreate them for you, which might be the better way to do it. So for now, I'm going to leave it blank, but later on we'll see that there might be value in putting it in. So again, the git ignore file, just to recap, is a file that we use to tell Git to ignore certain things. Like don't put this on Git. Don't put the builds folder on Git. We don't have a builds folder yet, but if we make one, we want to ignore it. And don't put anything that has ds store, because that's a Mac specific thing. All right. So I've done that. I'm exiting a Visual Studio Code. I don't want to use it for anything like that. I'm going to talk about how to use Visual Studio Code as an alternate editor for MonoDevelop. If you're someone who works on a Mac or even on Windows, if you don't want to use Visual Studio because it's too heavy, Code as an alternative editor, right? So if you're someone who's been working with, and if you're doing another course that uses Visual Studio Code today, did it before, and it's okay. It gives you really cool code hinting and everything else with Unity. Okay, let's go back. So now that I've got that piece, I want to create a GitHub repository online for this one. So I'm going to create a new repository, Sound Centennial College. We'll call this COMP305, and then Mail Pilot -D. Right, there we go. Press enter. And now I'm going to take these last 2 lines, right, because I've done all this stuff. All this. I just want to take these last 2 lines here, copy them, and go back to my terminal or command prompt and press paste to my repository and push everything out. Okay, so we got our master. So if you wanted to start from there, you can certainly go up on, so I refresh, you can see now that there is these files. Notice that I'm missing my git ignore file because I added it in after I made my initial commit. But I can add it in. I can do something like dot git commit -m, and I'll say added ignore file. And I'll git push origin master, which is these commands to connect with Git. Refresh. I have 2 commits now. I added a git ignore file right here. So when I add my builds folder later on, it'll ignore the folder, won't be on here. Okay. Let's start Unity. We're just going to go into a new screen for this one. So I'm going to go start. And now Unity is not going to find my project because I've got C and I got A. So I got to open it up. And click open. And I'm going to go to D. I'm going to click open. Starting off with what we did last week. So last week we had this. Right? So we had some stuff here, flying, and everything else, and so on. I want to talk a little bit about the prefab. There's a prefab problem that you might run into. And I kind of did it at length in the morning. I'm going to kind of cut it down because the prefabs can actually be a lot more difficult to work with than you think. One first thing I want to check out is if I go prefab and I go Unity, just to explain what it is, right? Prefabs are, right? So you can create a prefab, but what prefabs also, I want you to think about what they do. Prefabs, here's instantiating prefabs. Instantiate keyword to do that, to instantiate a prefab. And we're going to talk about how to instantiate prefabs today, right? Ways that we can use the instantiate prefab, or we can we can use prefabs that are created in a little differently than how they've done with the instantiate keyword. So where it basically creates a new instance of the prefab. Okay, that's what it can do. With prefabs, and I got to be honest with you, one of the challenges is that prefabs act like they are static containers. Assign a value programmatically to a prefab. All right, just letting you know. So that can cause issues. And some people have asked me in the past. They're like, I don't know why, but I added some stuff to my prefab via script, and then it's messed up. Because as soon as you add something to prefab with the script, we'll talk about what a prefab is in a second, it stays forever. Example, if I add a value for speed to a prefab, and I assign a value of 10 for all other instances of that prefab, from now until forever, right? A couple of examples of that. Okay, so keep this in mind, this whole idea of prefab. And the line for Unity is fantastic. Like, they have everything you need to know about building a game, about how to connect to different objects, how the component model works, the game objects. If I go game object Unity, here's a scripting API for game object. One of the great things is it talks about all the components and methods of a game object. For example, we're going to use getComponent today, and they give you the scripting API for how to use getComponents, because getComponents is a method for components of an object, right? And then assign it to, in this particular case. Okay, so lots of really cool things here in Unity, and we can't possibly talk about all of them in this course, because remember, this is game programming 1. There's game programming 2, where you're going to learn more. If you're a game student, you have no choice. I don't know if it's an elective anymore for if you're a software student. I don't know if it's an elective. If you can take game programming 2. Okay, is it elective? Awesome. All right. But if you're a game student, you need it. All right, so. Yeah. So I've opened up Unity. Here's Unity. And I've got this idea of these three clouds. Notice that when I play the game, right, in my scene, this is what really is happening in the game. It's kind of resetting everything. I've got my clouds and my island, and they keep on resetting forever. But these three clouds, they've been kind of plopped into our scene, and they're part of our hierarchy. This is the hierarchy right here. Know this. When something's in the hierarchy, as soon as my game starts, my scene starts, everything in the hierarchy gets, okay, automatically. And the start methods of each object in the hierarchy are triggered, right? Control how many clouds I have then. Maybe I don't want 3 clouds. Maybe I want 2 clouds. Maybe I want 4 clouds. Maybe I want the clouds to be bigger or smaller. I want to be able to control the clouds, and I need to do this programmatically. I want control of my clouds. We have to make our cloud, these cloud objects are prefab, like I just talked about. So 2 of the cloud objects, so I get rid of 2 of them. Again, if you're starting with iStart, I'm starting off with our previous project, and I've just renamed it D. Or you can download F2016 Mailpilot D to start where I'm starting. And here's my prefabs folder. Notice that my prefab is a cloud. It's a prefab. If I delete this, is it bad? Can I if I delete my cloud, does this get deleted too? That's the question. Yes. All right, let's try it out. My asset, will it delete my stuff in the hierarchy or no?
Yeah, definitely.
So okay, let's do a safer test. So here I've deleted my cloud. I'm going to put another object in here, right? And I'm going to duplicate this object or duplicate something else. We'll rename this thing test cloud. Right? Here's test cloud. Yay, test cloud. Another prefab of this test cloud, right? So maybe I'll make some changes, right? I want it to break my prefab instance, right? So I want to kind of put this in here. And now, what if, just putting it out there, my test cloud in here is the scale is twice as big, and that's my test cloud. So all instances of the test cloud are now twice as big, a massive cloud, right? And now I delete my test cloud. So here's my test cloud prefab, right? To my hierarchy. So let's delete it. It's good, right? No, it's not. Look how it's red. Be very careful. Once you make this and it's red, that's sign that it's red. Like it'll appear, but some things are broken inside of it, right? So whatever you do, if you want to delete your prefab, make a new one, copy and paste, keep it up as long as you can, get all the components remade so you know everything is as you want it, then delete your prefab and everything else. Otherwise, delete it and it's gone. You may break something. This may not work the way you think, this test cloud. Pull it back into my prefabs. Will it be okay then? Maybe. I don't know. I don't recommend it though. The prefabs, I'll tell you right now, the prefab, even though it shows a split cube background that you don't see, meta files that are kept, keep that prefab going. So please do not delete the prefab this object again, right? Otherwise, you may have to create everything again from scratch, like how the object works, the colliders, all that stuff's gonna be all done again. In the main hierarchy, as long as you have a prefab, I have my prefab, I can delete my cloud. So let's delete my cloud. Yay. Cool. A prefab, I don't want my cloud to be in the scene initially. I want to programmatically add my cloud in, right? I want to procedurally generate my cloud. Okay, how do I do that? Well, I need some other thing to do. I need some other way of doing it. I don't want to come to an ocean or a plane or an island. I need something else. And usually we use something called a game controller for that. This is something that we can latch on a script that runs at the beginning of the game that has nothing to do with the other objects in the game. And the game controller has no shape to it. It's invisible. The object that we're going to assign a script to. So how do I do that? I'm going to right-click. I'm going to create an empty object. name to game controller. There we go. I can move this higher in the hierarchy like this, let's say underneath the camera. It doesn't have to be though, it doesn't really matter where it is. But it comes with a transform because all game objects come with a transform. I can also tag this thing as the game controller. Reset this thing, just to make it just from a best practices perspective to the middle of the screen, or the middle of the game world. There we go. Object from my game controller. And now I want to be able to instantiate a few clouds. Well, I need a script for that. I right-click, I'm going to create a new C# script, and we're going to call this C# script game controller. There we go. As I make my script, I might as well connect it. So game controller, I'm going to right-click, or I'm going to kind of drag and drop over my my game controller object, and now I have a script. If I double-click on my script, or in your case, Visual Studio, and now there's a couple things we do. Typically, from best practices, we have instance variables, keep our encapsulation going, have public properties. When we use public properties, we do not see them in the inspector, right? They're not exposed. So sometimes what we do is we also have public instance variables, and we use those public instance variables for testing. Usually for testing if it's right or whatever. Okay. Let's add some variables that we use for testing. The cloud number, right? So public. Remember when we use a public keyword, we're going to call this cloud number. You can also call it with lowercase c, cloud number, doesn't matter. Now what number b? Can I have half a cloud, right? Or 0.5? No, so it's probably integer is the right one, right? I want to assign it a value, for example, 3, right? If you don't assign it a value here, when you instantiate this game controller class, it will not appear as a value, a default value in the inspector. To show you that, if I click away and click down to game controller, now you can see that I have a cloud number property that's in my inspector that has a value of 3. Okay, next. Now that I have a cloud number, I want to, in my start function, instantiate 3 clouds. Okay, a couple ways to do that. First of all, can I get a cloud? So I want to say, okay, I want to do a for loop. I want to double tap, so tab. And I click my for loop there, right? And I'll call this cloud count. My cloud count. If my cloud count is less than, right? Oh boy. Cloud count. It's not working the way I want it today. Cloud. Oh. That's okay, I'll type it by hand. Like Visual Studio better. Cloud counts, there we go. And it's less than cloud number. There we go. If it's less than this cloud number, then do the loop, right? Okay, so cloud number again is in the inspector. What I want to do is I want to use the instantiate keyword because I'm instantiating a prefab, right? So I want to do this, instantiate. And then I want to instantiate a cloud, right? Uh-oh. Can't see my cloud at all. I see cloud controller. How come? Because notice in the hierarchy, cloud does not exist. Cloud does not exist anywhere else except for my prefabs folder. Well, guess what? If I don't have cloud anywhere in my hierarchy, I can't find it. You know, kind of find with tag or whatever. It won't find anything. It only finds it if it exists in the hierarchy. So what can I do? Well, I could create a public. The easiest thing is to create a public variable again, like this. Call it a game object. That's what the cloud is, because we can't. It's not a. There's no certain type to it. Cloud. Okay. Once I've done this public game object, it'll appear like Did I save it? Should appear in the inspector in a second. Of course, you know, it always messes up when I want to prove something to you guys. It should work though. Yeah, no, it's
I think it's because there's an error.
it's probably because there's an error in the script. Where's the error? This.
Yes.
There's no error now, right? All right. So it should. There it is. There's the cloud, right? So what I want to do here, see how it says there's none game object, there's no reference. I need to make a reference, and I need to drag and drop my cloud into my cloud reference. Now there's a connection between my cloud prefab and my cloud reference, which is happening in my script. So if I go back, you can see that I'm instantiating a new cloud object, and I just say instantiate cloud. Okay. Okay, let's try it out. So play, and all of a sudden now I've got 3 clouds. Notice that when I do programmatically, the clouds are called clones, cloud clone, right? It's not cloud 1, cloud 2, cloud 3 like before. Created programmatically. And if I look at the scene, they've only been done once. They don't get erased. They just get instantiated or created, right? And it's doing it over and over again. It's just resetting everything. All right, going back to my game. For me, when I'm playing the game, I can't tell the difference. It looks like the clouds are just, I'm just playing the game from the get-go. Okay, that's one way. The other way to do it, I'm going to pull the other 2 ways really quickly because we took a long time to do this in the first part, is you could create the clouds as using the cloud controller script. Do that. So let's say, for example, I don't want to make it a game object. Here's way 2. I'm showing you this because platformers, and we have to use this kind of methodology over and over again. All right, so I could make this a cloud controller. Here's a cloud. What's the cloud? What is cloud controller? Cloud controller is a script. To the script cloud controller, this one. Why can't I see it inside the other script itself? Right, I'm seeing it within the game controller script because this is part of the same namespace. So whenever I include a class, in this particular case, cloud controller, my project, I can access it. Okay, now this can be bad. Why? Because if I have an error in any of my scripts in my project, whether I need them or not, because of this, because they're inside the same namespace. I'm trying to build my project. I have a script I have an error in a script that I'm not even using. Test script like we just saw now. It didn't work. Won't build. Right? The part is I have reference to this script, cloud controller, and if you look at cloud controller, it has all these other things. It describes my cloud's behavior, which is really what I'm doing here. If my cloud controller describes my cloud behavior, then we have to think about the game object hierarchy. Get to the game object when my cloud controller is just a script that's part of the game object. Back to our drawing board again. Let's go back to our drawing board so we can record this piece. Right? So the way the hierarchy works is the following. When we have a game object, I'm just going to make a new script. And we'll put a background, right, of white, just to describe this stuff. So here it is. So let's say, for example, I'm drawing my game object right here. This is the highest part of my hierarchy. My game object is a container, and my container, let's just say here's my game object, right? So my game object, it looks not black, it looks like this. I love it. It reverts back to the old thing. Yeah, game object. My game object, I have components, and one of the components automatically comes into play. As an example, I'm going to make this higher than the rectangle. One of my components is called the transform. component is part of every game object, the transform component. Other ones, right? For example, I could have inside my game object a collider. This one. No, it's not working like I like it. Let's go to here. Collider C. Arg. I'm trying to simulate a whiteboard. Sorry, guys. This here. And of course, they're all below the rectangle. So this is my rectangle right here. And I want to put them below the rectangle. Below the rectangle. There we go. And here's my collider. And another one. Here's my other collider. And we'll move this out. Let's say, for example, I also have an audio source. Which keeps track of my audio. As maybe some other things. Like, yeah, it's going to do it again. It's also going to have things like my rigid body, right? Components inside of my game object, yeah? So too is my script. My script component. So there's my script. As a component, what's the component's parent? Game object, right? And if this game object, my cloud, right? Then the script is not going to be called script. It's going to be called. That's what I named it. You can name it whatever you like. Right? So therefore, my cloud controller, the cloud object, right? Why am I saying this like this? Because if I want to go to the cloud script and go, and if I search for cloud controller, I'm referring to the script itself. If I look at get components, so if I do my get component, if I go back to my script, that's so the get components method, the game object, right? So if I do get component, something like this, get component, and then I'm going to kind of mention what it is. So for example, I'll look at the transform, right? And like this, I want to get a reference to the transform. I'm going to use get component. I'm going to put in the angle brackets. That's the type. So transform. If I want to look at collider, I'm going to put collider in there. If I want to look at rigid body, rigid body. If I want to put audio source, audio source. Whatever I put in there, I'm getting a reference to that component. Right? Cloud controller is what the script is called now. It's not called script when I do get component. Right? I can also do get components. Components returns an array. And if I had, as an example, and we're going to do this later today, audio source, right? So if I have more than one clip that I want to get to, or more than one audio source, for example, one audio source, right? We can have that in a game object. When it's audio source, it returns an array of both of these components. Okay, that's what it does. Why? More than one sound I want to play, right? And I have them in one game object. And so I want to get an array of objects that I can return so I can access those objects to play different sounds. Okay, why am I showing you this? Because, going back to this, I want to get, the one way we did it in my game controller was to instantiate a cloud object. Now I'm looking at it, the cloud is not a game object anymore, it's a script. So I can't just do this anymore. I can't instantiate a script. Instantiate a cloud.game object. Right? So really what I'm doing is, I should be kind of doing one of these, this.cloud.game object, which is exactly the same. However, in my game controller object, I have to change my reference type. I can't do this. If you try and do, oh yeah, that's cool, let's grab a cloud controller, put it in here, the actual script, I can't do that, right? Because I'm kind of referring a script to a script. I could go to my prefab, because my cloud has a cloud component in it, cloud controller, I could drag and drop my prefab again. All I'm getting is the cloud controller, not the object itself. Why is this sometimes preferred? Because if you notice that the cloud itself, this cloud, things I can do with it. For example, this dot cloud dot, and then I can do things like, I can also look at other objects like drift and speed, right? Because it understands what it is. It's a cloud. It's not just a generic game object. Generic game object, don't get anything from it. Okay. So that's one way of doing it. Now, remember, if I was to do something like this, name, putting it out there, right, is equal to something, whatever it's going to be, right? This is going to be part of that cloud prefab forever. And a meta tag somewhere, it's going to keep track of that. All right? So anything you do programmatically to a prefab, I'm referring to a prefab here. For example, put it out there, right? Let's say, I'm going to do this one time. I want to turn the game script off, like this. So I'm going to say this. First of all, let's run it with the way it is, okay? So here it is, play. Let's come back the same way they did before. They're still clones of each other, right? All that stuff. Okay, cool. Now in the prefab, in the code, this dot cloud dot game object dot enabled, or just the cloud itself, enabled is equal to false. Okay? And I run it one time. So I'm going to run it one time. Run, no clouds, right? There's one cloud. Okay, good. And if I take it off. Okay, now let's take a look at the cloud. It's cloud controller script. I turned it off. It's physically off in the prefab. Guys, this screws people up when they see this kind of thing. They're like, wait a minute, I just modified the prefab by doing a piece of code once. It remembers what your setting was. Please don't do that, right? Because then this is the cause of some problem, some pain. You're like, oh my God, somehow I turned my prefab, my script completely off from my programming, and it stays. It's going to remember that, right? You ran it once in the code by accident, right? So this stage, because otherwise I'm going to protracted example and not going to work. I also want to mention, if you think about creating you want to try and do it in here with a list, which sometimes we can do as well. Create a list collection, and you want a list of clouds. Okay. But if you want to refer to that list, and you think that you're going to refer to each individual cloud, right? You might be wrong. I want to change one cloud speed fab, and you change the speed, you change it for all of them. Don't do that. Don't do it here. This is not the way to do it. All right, let's object one more time. So here I'm a cloud controller. Now I'm going to go back to game object. Here's my game object. Not anymore. It can go back to this, right? But I want to get code hinting. I want to get code hinting, right, for my cloud. Itself is just a simple cloud, right? And I'm going to get a reference to my cloud. Again, if you go back to my game controller, now I've lost my reference because I'm going back to a game object. So I have to drag and drop my cloud. Here it is, right? But I want my cloud itself, this one, this object that I'm getting a reference to, some better coding, code hinting. For example, if I go this.cloud.speed, because speed doesn't exist in my cloud, it's just a game object. So could I do something like this? You know, this.cloud, again, I'll put it out there. Can I somehow code it like this, cloud controller into a cloud controller? Could I do this, right? And the answer is, yeah, you can but what the hell is this going to be afterwards? It's going to turn into a script again. So can I cast it? Yes, I can. Not what I want to do. Okay. I don't have a way of hooking into my object if it's a prefab like that. It won't be a cloud object anymore unless it's physically in the scene. Okay. So fine, we've created our clouds. We've made 3 of them as an example. And now what I want to do is they're going to come down. I'm going to collide, right? Okay, let's talk about this. So let's check this out. I've made 3 clouds. And now I collide. You see that the hit is happening. Prefabs. I just finished prefabs because I want to talk about the challenges with prefabs. Because people have emailed me in the past, sent me Slack message or whatever. I don't know why, but my prefab doesn't seem to appear. Sometimes this is the reason. They're the reason why things don't work. My stuff doesn't move. That's another thing I got lately. That your script is connected to your objects. Like, for example, my plane. For my plane to move, I need a script. This script. My plane, it's a problem. Here's another thing. I created my plane script, and then I added my polygon collider and my rigid body after it. But the thing is, we need to clean this up a little bit. I'd like to have my script at the bottom of my hierarchy, and my polygon collider and my rigid body above my script. How do I do this? Here, each component has an option to move up in the hierarchy. You can do that. So moving my polygon up, then I can collapse it. I can move that up, and then I can collapse it. Because now I can have my script at the bottom, which is where I want it. So my scripts should have your objects, just from a best practice perspective. My ocean has the bottom, my islands at the bottom, my game controller at the bottom, right? And so too now does my plane have it at the bottom. I want to add sounds, okay? And the way I want to do this is when my plane collides with an island, I want to add sounds. I want to add the collision sound, okay? I also want to add score, right? So I want to talk about those 2 things, the UI, the user interface that we're going to make, and the sounds when they collide. In the morning, I did the user interface first, and I added the sounds afterwards. I want to do it the other way around. I want to do the sounds first, and we'll do the user interface afterwards. User interface can take a long time, okay? So how do I do this? Files right here, engine sound, thunder sound, and yay sound, right? To play the engine sound all the time, right? I can drop the engine onto my plane. Notice that it creates an audio source for me automatically. So when the plane starts playing or it gets instantiated, it'll play my audio source in here. What I do is, right now I'm recording with my earphones. I'm going to take my earphones out so you can hear the sound. Not because I want you to hear the beautiful sound, but because you can hear that it's turned on. It is great on the video, but at least this way you'll hear the sounds as they play. Here we go. So here's the first sound. Oh man, what happened? Because I'm not looping it, so I got to loop it. So if I loop it now, press it again. Okay, sound, right? It's just playing when this object, on awake means instantiated because it's in the hierarchy. It's gonna start. It's gonna be instantiated in the scene because it's in the hierarchy. Replace it manually in the hierarchy. Now it's gonna loop forever. This is good, but I want to include other sounds. Like for example, when I collide with the island or the cloud, sounds like the thunder sound or the yay sound, right? Okay, I could put them as part of the other objects. Like for example, I want to play the other object, but that means I have to refer other objects from my script, right? And one of them isn't even instantiated, my cloud. I got to make a cloud reference inside my player script to reference the cloud object so that it plays the sound, right? And I only want to play it once. All the sounds, all the collisions are happening because of my plane. So I might as well put all the audio sounds in my plane. And the plane is the thing that's going to make all the audio happen, right?
the easier way to do it. Not the only way, by the way. Drop anymore, because if I drag and drop my Thunder sound now to the add component area, because I have my audio source, it wipes out my audio source that I had there, the engine sound going. I don't want that. Let's put the engine sound back. What I do want to do is add 2 more audio sources, and I can do that by clicking Add Component, kind of filter audio source, like this here. I can add a new audio source in there. Notice here's my second audio source, but my clip is empty. Let's put in as this audio source. Yay. And then the next one, I'll add another audio source. And up in this one, I'll put in the yay sound. I don't want to play on awake. So I'm going to click both those options off. So no play on awake. Okay. Okay. I want to be able to reference these sources. So when I have a collision with my island or my clouds, I want to play these sounds. Okay. I already have in my scripts, if I go to my scripts, plane controller has collisions. I did this last week, remember? So what I can do is, instead of saying island hit, I want to make the island sound happen. But I need a reference to that audio source. This is where I'm going to use get components, because I have 3 audio sources, and I can't choose which one off the top of my head. I got to choose. I have my engine sound, my thunder sound, and my yay sound. This is the easiest thing, not the only way, and not exactly the best way. We're going to talk about other ways, of course. Okay, so inside my private transform, I can do that, but I want to make some public in my plane object, my plane controller, and this again, I'm going to put in there just for testing only, because later on we can take them out and we can use other references. So public audio source is audio source array. I want to make an audio source array, right? And we're going to call this sounds. An audio source array, it's called sounds. This with my audio source array. If I save this and go back to my script, to my plane, I have a sounds array. My size is 0. Okay, I could make references here one by one. Audio sources above my script. So move them up, and I move this up, and I want to move this up. There's my audio source. My script's at the bottom again. So again, engine, thunder, yay. Okay. Sources right here. Drop into this size right here. Like right now, my size is 0. I can make it 3. Right, press enter, and I have room for audio sources here. Right, and I could do something like this: drag the first one here, and the second one there, and a third one here. Could do that. Theoretically, I could draw a reference to this audio source. So now that's it. Once I have public audio source, I did it a little differently in the morning. These public audio sources right here, right? The first one, right? We don't know, but I'm hoping it's the engine sound, right? Right? So I could play the first one as the engine sound. The second one would be the thunder sound. The third one. Could do it that way. The option is not to make it public at all, right? And I want to try this option. I'm showing you both options so you can see which way you want to go. Because you can basically decide a player controller how you want to access the components in your script. For example, do I really care about the first one? There's no, right? The other thing to do is, I'm going to go back today. So here's my audio source sounds. I could do this. I could make it so that it's programmatic. So instead of public, I can make this private. So here's my sounds script. Then I would have to do something like this. In my start method, I would have to do something like this.sounds is equal to this.getComponents, this one, audio source. This is the programmatic way of doing things. Okay, I've just done the same thing. So I've done this. Now is equal to all the audio sources. If I do it this way, right, I still need to make references to my for example, I have to make a private audio source, and maybe I'll call this sound the thunder sound. Thunder sound. There you go. Private audio source, and I'll call this the yay sound, like this. Make that. And then I can do something like this. I can say, well, this dot underscore thunder sound is equal to, sorry, this dot sounds, sorry, which would be the thunder sound. I can say this dot underscore thunder sound, sorry, yay sound, yay sound is equal to this dot sounds 2, because it's the second script. Right? Because, right? I can see that the first script, first audio source is my engine. 1, thunder. And 2, yay. Right? I could do this. Then down here, I could say something like this. I could say this dot underscore island, right? It's a yay sound dot play. When I hit the island, I get this, and for my thunder sound, this dot underscore thunder sound dot play. Yeah. If I test it, it'll look like this.
Yay. Yay. Yay.
Yay, boom, boom, boom. All right, it's funny. But the way it works is, again, I can use multiple sources, hard code which one it is. Not great, right? But it works in the morning, but I'll fix it now. Can you think about a system that does both? So the same way I kind of did it, but it's definitely an audio source. Here's my audio sources. But instead of doing this and getting an array of audio sources, I don't need them all. A way of doing it differently. And the answer is there is. So I can make these public. So here's my thunder sound. And I'll make this public, yay sound. And I'll pull these, just from an annotation perspective. I don't need this anymore, or this. But I don't even need this. Right? All that script is gone. And in my public, right, I'm going to be playing that script. There's errors in my script here. And I want to make thunder sound and yay sound now. So thunder sound and yay sound is here. Thunder sound, yay sound. If you notice, if I go back, I can do the same thing I did before, but they're right here, thunder sound and yay sound, right? So I know exactly what they are. How do I do that? I know that this is my thunder sound. I drag my audio source in here. And I know this is my yay sound source in here. And now I've got references to it. Let's check this out and see if it works. I'll press play. Same idea.
Yay. Yay. Yay.
So just play the audio source. Again, this departs from what we saw in the book. The book did it with clips. I'm showing you can do it just as easily with the audio source. Is it the only way? No. It's one way of doing it. And like I showed you, you can also create an array different things. It's not wrong to do it any other way. And in an exam, some people ask, well, Tom, you've talked about different ways of doing it. Which was the best way? Make it work right now. Seriously, that's all I care about in an exam. If it works, you're golden. If you do what I'm telling you to do, right? If it doesn't work, questions so far? We kind of went for a bit. Yes.
If we use get components,
Yes.
do we have to use as well? Or
Because
can we just use only one that I put in
if you only care for one of them, for example, you didn't want to assign friendly names for them, like the thunder sound, A sound. You just want to play. You can use the array too. You can say play in square brackets 1.play. You can do that too. I'm just making friendly names so we know what the hell they are. What if we have like 40 sounds we're playing? Like 50 sounds, 100 sounds. Are you going to go through like every one of those things? It's too crazy. It's better to name them so you know what they are and you can call them up. I want to play the yay sound. I want to play the thunder sound. I want to play the bullet sound. I want to play the impact sound. I want to play the ground sound. I want to play the sky sound. Whatever. You can. It makes sense of implementing it that way. The other way of doing it is to create an enum. That's the third way or fourth way of doing it. So people who knows what an enum is, right? Enumeration, right? And the enumeration has the names of the objects you want, yay, thunder, and so on. And then you use the array, but you use the enumeration. The array is going to be the index 0, 1, 2, 3. You just put in there instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, put in engine, yay, thunder, and then it plays those sounds. But again, it's all about programming style, depending on what you want to do. Okay, I want to take a short break. I think we've got our sounds ready to go. What about, we're going to create one more sound, all right? And we're going to talk about that crazy, like, game over sound. We're going to do it later. I'm going to take a short break because I think we've gotten to the point where we've added in a game controller that instantiates objects. We've talked about prefabs, and we've done. It's a great place to stop, and I'll update GitHub for you guys, for those people who weren't able to get everything done or who couldn't follow along fast enough. All right, so let's do that first. So first, in order for me to do GitHub, I want to save my scene, and I want to save my project. And then I want to close up Unity. That's the right thing to do. Up my terminal and say git add everything. Git commit -m, and I'll say added game controller and sounds. So, there we go. Git. Now that I've done that, git push origin master, and then it'll push everything up to GitHub. Good, that's done. If I go to GitHub now, if I refresh, and you can see that I've got 3 commits now that talk about what I've done. Initial commit, my git ignore file, and my game controller sounds. Are we good? Let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue.